Senate will now come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will now be led by Chief of Staff Kohler, followed by a moment of silence and reflection. If able, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
The clerk will now call the roll. Please correct the pronunciation of your name if it is incorrect.
Lauren Anderson. Present. William Barnes. Timothy Barr. Bella Brash. Present. Natalia Beyer.
Present.
William Costello. Emma Cumby. Present. Kiki DiPolito. Present. Grant Wisnowski. Present. Nicholas Gavin. Amelia Gay. Present. Caleb Geddens. Present. Kaylee Goodrich. Present. Aiden Gruner. Present. Zoe Hopkins. Present. Daniel Huang. Present. Muhammad Iftikhar. Present. Anita John. Present. Lokika Cassetti. Present. Camden Kay. Present. Tori Kerner. Present. Mia LaPenta. Present. Donnie Lapsley. Present. Jeffrey Lyons. Present. Jackson Matthews. Present. Isabel Miller. Mackenzie Mozo. Bryson Peterson. Present. Stone Pillsbury. Landon Pollock. Ainsley Reed. Soraya Romali. Rodrigo Rojas. Taylor Soker. Present. Lucas Solomon. Present. Amaya Sao. Present. Thomas Spurgeon. Present. William Wenzel. Here. Lawson Windsor. Present. Marion Winters.
With the quorum being present, is there a motion to approve the Journal of November 13th as found online? Is there a second? Second. Without objection, so ordered. We are now in line for the general orders of the Senate, beginning with reports from Senate leadership. Speaker Pro Tempore Beyer, you are recognized to give a report on the Rules Committee. Hi, everybody. Maura is unfortunately not feeling well, so I'll be taking over today, but just a quick little update from me. Last Sunday at 5:30, the Rules Committee approved 12 pieces of legislation that were all found unanimously favorable. In addition to that, if you are a delegation chairperson, thank you for having your legislation submitted. There are a couple of y'all that have yet to submit your pieces, so please just get them in by Friday for your respective college. I yield my time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we can move on. We will now hear a report from the Academics Committee. Chairwoman Anderson, you are recognized to speak.
Hi guys, I hope you guys are all doing well. We met at 8:30 on Monday on Teams and we went over SBL 11645, which is Senator Hopkins' legislation on online classes. It was unanimously favorable with one abstention, and then other than that, we're just working on individual initiatives and such, kind of in a brainstorming phase. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you, Chairwoman Anderson. We will now hear a report from the Finance Committee. Chairman Wenzel, you are recognized.
Hello, everyone. Finance Committee met at their normal time, 3:30 on Friday. Besides the normal allocations, don't really have much to report, so I'll yield my time to questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you, Chairman Wenzel. We will now hear a report from the Health and Safety Committee. Chairman Gruner, you are recognized to speak.
Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Health and Safety met last Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We are continuing to work on our 2025 menstrual product drive, which is currently being led by Senators Miller, Goodrich, Hopkins, and Cumby. We also will be having a meeting tomorrow with the Student Cancer Prevention Coalition, where we will discuss advocating and explaining different cancer and healthy lifestyle practices that can be led on campus. This is currently being done through Senator John. We also have 3 pieces of legislation tonight, one from Senator Mozo to increase fee transparency for the Center of Health and Wellbeing, one from Senator John to update and improve the freshman orientation services on our campus, and one from Senator Miller to restore the Bull Street garage safety and accessibility. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Inclusion and Equity Committee. Chairwoman Cassetti, you are recognized to speak.
Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Inclusion and Equity met on Tuesday, which was yesterday, from 5 to 5:30, and we essentially kind of discussed we reconvened on our discussion with FAFSA, and we discussed what we could do based on the feedback they gave us. We also kind of planned out the event that we had lined up for February. But other than that, there's no other major update, and I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you, Chairwoman Cassetti. We will now hear a report from the Judiciary Committee. Chairman Kay, you are recognized to speak.
Good afternoon, everybody. That's loud. Good afternoon. Judiciary met this Friday at 12 o'clock to go over SBL 48, which established an appendix definition section inside of the Code of Laws. I'll yield to any questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you, Camden. We will now hear a report from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Vice Chairwoman D'Appolito, you are recognized to speak.
Powers met this Friday to review SBL 11648, a bill to establish a definitions appendix. It was found favorable. We also reviewed the seat reapportionment referred by the Elections Commissioner. Legislation on that will be coming soon. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The Vice Chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Vice Chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Student Life Committee. Chairman Barnes, you are recognized to speak.
Hey everyone. Dang, that is loud. Nothing much from Student Life. We did not meet this week, but we are continuing to push our Christmas toy drive along with working on some individual initiatives that are going to be hitting the floor tonight. Please continue donating for the drive. Moore agreed to make it a dress down, a themed one for the last Senate. She'll give you all more details on that, so be sure you donate and send proof. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Sustainability Committee. Chairwoman LaPinta, you are recognized to speak.
Hey guys, okay, yeah, you really weren't lying, good Lord. So sustainability didn't meet this week. I just went ahead and met with Senator Kerner and Senator Lyons to discuss a potential codes change that we're thinking about doing. This would likely happen next semester, if not maybe a little bit before Christmas break. And with that, I'll yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Freshman Council. Are there any representatives from the Freshman Council present?
So this Monday we had a large amount of our FROCO members come out to the information session that the Elections Commission did. After that, we met starting at 6:30, where all of our committees worked together to come up with a service activity we're going to be doing during our final meeting of the fall semester. We decided on doing hot chocolate goodie bags for finals week. And then after that, we did a speed dating activity where we practiced elevator pitches. I yield my time to questions.
The FROCO member yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the Freshman Council? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Speaker of the Senate, Maura Hamilton. Chief of Staff Kohler, you are recognized to speak.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for bearing with us today as we're adjusting without Maura here. Just some updates from me. Like Chairman Barnes said, next week of Senate, so not next week, the following week, if you bring a toy for the toy drive, you will get to dress down at Senate, so keep that in mind. That is, I believe, December 4th. Does that sound right? Okay, perfect. Also, I will soon be working on a Food for Thought initiative. Y'all probably saw Government Relations do something similar a couple weeks ago. Maura and I have been chatting about how we can help y'all get involved with the general student body, kind of hear from them what they need from Senate. So that will probably be first few weeks that we come back from Christmas break or from winter break is when we will start working on that. I will primarily be working with delegation chairs, so delegation chairs, just be on the lookout for an email from me. Maura did text me right now. She said that tell them it's holiday sweaters, so you can wear holiday sweaters for your dress down on December 4th, and that she's very proud of everyone who just submitted their first few pieces of legislation. And with that, I yield to questions.
The Chief of Staff yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chief of Staff? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for a report from the Student Body Treasurer. Treasurer Lycan, you are recognized to speak.
Hello everyone, excited to give my first update officially as treasurer. So quickly want to thank Jacob Ott and Patton Byers for their time in this role, and I also need to give a huge shout out to the treasurer's staff for helping operations continue to run smoothly in this transitory period. Specifically Chief of Staff Kulam, he has been really helpful these past couple weeks. So as far as internal updates, the treasurer's staff and comptrollers now have mandatory weekly meetings. That was not the case before. We had our first one yesterday, and we also had a mandatory comptroller retraining session. So we went over expectations for the rest of the academic year. I also remade the comptroller checklist and included any legislative updates from the Senate in there. That way everything is up to date. We also went over the org classification, so undergraduate versus graduate, what the technical distinction is there. There's also now a treasurer's folder in the public information Google Drive, so we will be working on moving things out of the old OneDrive into this public folder. I have been completing trainings with our financial advisor, Matt Hines, and then Amber Hyatt and Emma Ormond in the LSC. That should wrap up by the end of this week. I have also nominated a new comptroller, so we will hopefully have some more help soon. As far as the more external updates, I met with Chairman Wenzel last week and we discussed SBL 33. I also attended Finance Committee on Friday and we talked more about what the process for that retroactive funding is going to look like, as well as who's going to be eligible. So as of yesterday morning, every organization that should be eligible for that retroactive funding should have received an email from me. I also sent out a mass email to every single president and treasurer of a student organization on campus this morning. I introduced myself. I asked them to reach out if they had any questions about the funding process, about who their comptroller was. I also directed them to the new public information treasurer's folder that I just mentioned. And additionally, I encouraged them to reach out to me if they had any requests or appeals for funding. So if they think they might be eligible under SBL 33, they're emailing me through tomorrow. And then per the codes, because it is the penultimate Senate session of the fall semester, I'm giving an internal budget update from the student government funds. So as of right now, we have spent 33% of the internal fund. So that is roughly $77K out of the roughly $115K that we have allocated for this year, including 41% of the operational fund from July to February. If you have more specific questions on that, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to talk about that. Thank you. I know that was a lot. Hopefully it won't be quite as many updates going forward, but with that, I yield my time to questions.
The treasurer yields to questions. Are there any questions for the treasurer? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for a report from Student Body Vice President. Vice President Tax, you are now recognized to speak.
Hi everyone. So this week, this is a very loud microphone. This week I'm meeting with the new and current CPA president to brainstorm fraternities and sororities that will be interested in taking the community shop as a secondary philanthropy.
So if you are involved in any form of Greek life here on campus and you think your organization would be interested, please let me know. This is just an ability to make sure that the community shop has a steady flow of clothes and canned food items throughout the year. Typically, it tends to dip around February because everyone is super giving for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then it's kind of forgotten about. But on that note as well, they are very much in need of men's average size clothing. So if you are giving away any form of clothing, please consider donating it to the community shop. But to kind of ramp up some marketing around that, we are going to be doing a video over Christmas break called The Power of a Tie. And it's basically going to show a man donating a tie and how that can impact a student who needs it, whether that's getting a job or an internship. So I'm super excited to work on that and get that posted in collaboration with the community shop. I'm also on the Mungo Prestigious Teaching Board Committee, which is supposed to have SG representation. However, it is at a very inconvenient time. So if any of you are available tomorrow from 1:15 to 3, please let me know. We really need SG representation, and it's a very big deal and a great way to connect with faculty in the different colleges. I know that I've met faculty from all across the university, and it's been a great experience. And then another committee, I also serve on the Quality Teaching Committee as the SG representative, and there was some debate on utilization of software and technology for active learning. So I'm going to be sending out a survey. Please fill it out. I just want to make sure that I have quality information to give to them, but I just wanted to get student input on your experience of using software and technology for an active learning environment in the classroom. Has it detracted? Has it added? What does that look like? My last thing, we need water bottle pass-routers this weekend for the Wofford game. And how many of you guys are going home? Probably all of you. So please let me know if you'd be able to attend. With that, I yield my time.
The Vice President yields to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for a report from the student body president, historian Cole Rotundo. You are now recognized to speak.
Hi everyone, Patton, sorry he couldn't be here, but I'll be giving his updates. So we've been working on a permanent absence policy change that allows for unexcused absences for wellness days. This goes through the Faculty Senate. So Patton's been working with their chair, Dr. Wayne Ouden. Last week, members of his staff and Patton helped film a video with Cocky and USC to announce the after-hours shuttle. That video should come out right before we come back to school in January. We're trying to plan an event right before the exam season starts to pass out Red Bull or some kind of energy drink to students to help them out. Members of the President's Cabinet are working on an Interfaith Week of Service where different religious organizations can come together for a common cause to help our students. This will happen at some point next semester. And Myron, who is on the President's Cabinet, is also working on creating a team for MLK Day of Service. Please talk to him if you are interested in helping or collaborating. He's right back there. And with that, I yield my time.
The historian yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for special orders of the Senate. Are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other? The clerk will now read.
A communication from the Office of the Student Body Treasurer concerning the nomination of Megan Duty to the position of Comptroller.
The nominee is referred to the Finance Committee. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other? The clerk will now read. Seeing none, thank you. Seeing no more special orders of the Senate, we are now in the motion period. Does anyone have a motion? Senator Kerner. There's been a motion to add the legislation titled, "A Recommendation to Implement Social Workers as a Resource to Students at the University of South Carolina" to the first reading calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is now assigned the number 61 and placed on the first reading calendar. Senator Kay?
I move to place SBL
There's been a motion to add the legislation titled, "A Recommendation to Urge the University to Fix the Senate Street Garage Elevator to the First Reading Calendar." Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is now assigned the number 62 and placed on the first reading calendar. Okay. Senator Dworsnowski. There's been a motion to remove Senator Dworsnowski from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Dworsnowski. There's been a motion to add Senator Dworsnowski to the Finance Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Chairman Barnes. There's been a motion to remove Chairman Barnes from the Ad Hoc Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Seeing no more motions, is there a motion to dispense of the motion period? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now on the call of the introduction of new legislation. The clerk will read.
SBL 11649, sponsored by Senator Mozo, a recommendation to increase fee transparency and cost awareness at the University Student Health Center.
Senator Blanton, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak on MAC's legislation for tonight. So the University of South Carolina Student Health Center is a vital resource for students, as we know. It offers a range of convenient and accessible health services. However, a significant gap in fee transparency has been identified by students here in student government and outside of it. This is supported by a survey sent out to students, which found that 11.1% of students who filled out the survey were somewhat aware of charges, and 88.9% responded saying they were not at all aware of the charges. Currently, fee information is buried deep within the Student Health Center's website, requiring students to navigate through multiple links under the insurance section to find additional costs. While additional information is also not accessible that is necessary to determine exactly what costs will apply to you. This creates unnecessary barriers to understanding the true cost of the services you're receiving or required to receive for your health. Students in the survey expressed the need for a more centralized list of consistent, easily accessible fees to better plan for their healthcare expenses. To address this issue, we recommend the following. Improve virtual transparency by centralizing fee information and reducing the steps to access the information via the website. Provide verbal communication to students during appointments, ensuring they're aware of potential costs even with insurance coverage. And send email notifications with fee details to students when booking services so they can make informed decisions before confirming their appointments. These charges will enhance transparency, reduce miscommunication, and improve students' trust in the health center. By implementing these measures, the university can better align with its commitment to serving the needs of students and improving campus health as a whole. Thank you, and I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing no more questions, the legislation is now referred to the Health and Safety Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11650, sponsored by Senator Govan and Dworsnowski, a recommendation to increase food safety standards across university dining locations.
Senators Govan and Dworsnowski, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
So this is a pretty simple piece of legislation. I'm not going to waste too much of your time. As the name implies, it's a recommendation to increase food safety standards across the university in light of several cases of food poisoning, not limited to Senator Dworsnowski over here, who personally suffered from it, in particular in Russell House, but not just. And that's it. You want to say anything?
Yeah, I've been witnessing food poisonings on campus since my freshman year. I remember my friend got salmonella for a week at Honeycomb, and I just haven't seen the university doing enough to resolve this issue, especially considering that freshmen are required to buy a meal plan. They deserve to be able to trust where their food is coming from, and I think that student health should be our #1 priority. So, with that, we yield our time to questions.
The senators yield their time to questions. Are there any questions for the senators? Senator Gettins.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the times, I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think a lot of the times it's just not being reported at all. At least the people that I've spoke to, the most they do is post on the USC story a picture of the raw chicken that they ate, and that's about as far as it goes. So I think most students just don't take the steps to go through the proper process, which is why the school is still dealing with this issue and not addressing it.
Any other questions? Seeing no more questions, this legislation is now referred to the Health and Safety Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11651, sponsored by Senator John, a recommendation to integrate the Center of Health and Wellbeing video during the mandatory session at orientation.
Senator John, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Before I go any further, I would like to thank our Vice President Courtney Tax for conducting a survey, which was partnering up with Seven Brew and the Center of Health and Wellbeing. So that actually really helped me on my research. So based on the survey, 54% of students were unaware of the counseling and psychiatry services offered by the Center of Health and Wellbeing. And this is actually a very concerning thing because there are so many resources offered at USC, but many students are unaware of this. And I just want to ask you guys, do you guys know that we have a free drop-in psychiatry session? And if you guys know, could you tell me where it is? This is the problem. We have so many resources, and it's at Russell House 303. It's from Tuesday and Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. So as you can see, we have all these resources, but still students are unaware. So you might be thinking, what might be the reason that students are not aware of this? So one of the reasons, the Center of Health and Wellbeing during orientation time, their speakers are not during the mandatory session. So if you're at the orientation, the Center of Health and Wellbeing speakers are at the breakout sessions. So if many students, it's a long day, and many students might not go to the mandatory session. So basically, and I understand from the orientation department team, they cannot give time to each and every department because orientation is a really long process. So what this legislation does is by giving the Center of Health and Wellbeing the opportunity to make a video and present this video during the mandatory orientation session. And what this video will include will be the importance of submitting all immunization paperwork, how to access services, including locations, hours of operations, and appointment scheduling process. It will also address some of the common issues faced by students. And I just want Senate to remember that a healthy campus is a thriving campus. So by passing this legislation, we're actually investing in our future students and freshmen transfer students, helping them know that there are so many resources out there and we're here for you. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing no more questions, the legislation is now referred to the Health and Safety Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBO 11652, sponsored by Senator Mozo, a recommendation to host the March Madness Women's Basketball Watch Party at Colonial Life Arena.
Senator Gettins and Blanton, or just Senator Blanton, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hey guys, so here to speak on Vice Chair Mozo's legislation. So USC's women's basketball game, as we know, has an incredible history of success, our historic undefeated season last year, and 6 Final Four appearances since 2015. Despite this, the university's never held a watch party for their Final Four championship games in Colonial Life Arena, where the team plays. Instead, past watch parties have been held in Russell House, which has limited space and doesn't reflect the true magnitude of the support the team deserves. Many students haven't been able to go just due to the constraints in size and just might not be as appealing as having it at Colonial Life. So other elite women's basketball schools do host arena watch parties that are featured on national broadcasts, showing their fans and school spirit. Our women's basketball team deserves the same recognition, especially considering their elite status as a women's basketball school. We propose that this year's March Madness Final Four and championship watch parties be held in Colonial Life Arena to honor the team's success and amplify school pride on a national stage. So that's pretty much all that, but I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing no more questions, the legislation is now referred to the Student Life. Oh, Senator Lapsley. Approved. Thank you. The legislation is now referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11653, sponsored by the Finance Committee, a recommendation to permit the Finance Committee to allocate funds.
Chairman Wenzel, you are recognized to speak.
Hello, everyone. Pretty simple week. We reviewed $3,017.23 and approved $2,973.68. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Is there a motion to pass by acclamation? Senator Matthews.
Yes, I motion to pass by acclamation.
Seeing no objections, the legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11654, sponsored by Senator Miller, a recommendation to restore the Bull Street Garage safety and accessibility.
Senator Miller, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Okay, hey y'all, this is a pretty simple legislation, just working on restoring Bull Street Garage. So the main thing is repainting the lines in there. Once you get past the 5th floor, there's no lines anymore, and a lot of people are parking over lines, and it's caused some accidents and stuff that I've seen in there, let alone people not being able to park up there because people are parking over 2 lines. So that's pretty much it, and with that, I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing no more questions, the legislation is now referred to the Health and Safety Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11655, sponsored by Senator Brash and the College of Arts and Sciences delegation, a recommendation to urge the university to reduce the Carolina card replacement fee to $25 and include more details about the rationale for the fee.
The sponsors are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Hi. So SBL 11655 proposes a $10 reduction to the current Carolina card replacement fee, which is set at $35. So off the bat, $35 is kind of a lot for college students, but when we look a little bit deeper, we see how disproportionate this fee really is. For example, the University of Arkansas replacement fee is $25. The University of Florida Gator card, as well as the FSU card replacement fees, are $15. The Texas A&M Aggie card is $12, and even Clemson has a lower replacement card fee than us at $30, which is unacceptable. Now, let's look at the replacement fee in relativity to other things on campus. Currently, a meal swipe for breakfast is $7.50, and a meal plan for lunch and dinner is $10.50. So if you're going to get your Carolina card replaced, you're paying more than three times the amount that you would pay for a meal on campus. Currently in the university bookstore, an academic planner is selling for $19.98, which is still $15 cheaper than our replacement card. I have been in contact with the Carolina Card office. We have communicated via email about 3 conversations, and they put me in touch with Joseph Fortune, who is the office director of the Carolina Card office, and he has some good news. He is open to discussing. We actually have an in-person meeting scheduled for after Thanksgiving break to talk more of the specific logistics of this bill. But he had said that the Carolina Card replacement fees go towards card stock and the maintenance of software and hardware that support the card printing process. So, he had also said that starting in 2026, they're looking to digitize the Carolina Card fee, or digitize Carolina Card, so that's exciting news. But that does not address our constituents' concerns currently. And with that, I will yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Chairman Barnes. Approved. Seeing no more questions, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life Committee.
Y'all.
Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11656, introduced by Senator Sowell, a recommendation to create more study spaces for the College of Pharmacy and other university students in Coker Life Sciences building.
Senator Sowell, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Oops, sorry. Hey everybody, if y'all don't know, the College of Pharmacy is located in Coker Life Sciences building, and we only have one student study lounge. We're supposed to accommodate over like 300 to 400 students a day, but due to the schedule in the College of Pharmacy, depending on what year you are, sometimes you have classes like in the mornings or in the afternoon, so the study lounge is not very like convenient to use because sometimes it causes like a distraction when students are in and out throughout the school day. We did have extra study spaces downstairs in Coker, like when you first walk in, like where the vending machines were, but that's recently been taken down in order to, they're building like a general store in that area, so we don't have that space anymore to use for studying. And if you walk through Coker, there's no study spaces. If you go on like different floors and like around some corners, there's like tables and like some chairs, but there's no like real like study area where you can like study. So oftentimes pharmacy students, we have to leave in the breaks between classes and have to go to the library or another part of campus to find different areas to study because there's not really any spaces to study. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Academics Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11657, sponsored by Senator Goodrich, a recommendation to update Wardlaw College of Education.
Senator Goodrich, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hi guys, happy Wednesday. So I did a survey of Wardlaw College and just noticed some overall maintenance issues. Like the elevator, for example, like has to be from the 1920s. Like if you've ever walked in there, it's like a push button. Like it's not even really like a normal elevator. It's also like the size of this podium. Like you have to like, he's shaking his head, he knows, he's been in there. So it's just extremely old, extremely small, as well as the air conditioning. I asked a couple students who actually go to school there on a daily basis, and they said that it's just overall like very hot, kind of like temperamental, like it just doesn't really work very well. I also spoke to someone who works there, like I just like knocked on their door and spoke to them. Didn't catch their name, sorry guys. But she basically told me that sometimes when it rains outside, it also rains inside. So there's just some overall general things that need to be fixed. And if you read my bill, that's why or you read my recommendation, that's why it's like very vague. Also just noticed in the classrooms, like there's a lack of technology compared to other schools. And we're training our next generation of teachers, and obviously with teaching comes a lot of technology and things like that, and we can't send our teachers out into the school systems not knowing how to use updated technology. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11658, sponsored by Senator Cumby, a recommendation to increase communication between Arnold School of Public Health senators and constituents.
Senator Cumby, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. So hi guys, so the idea of this bill was brought into fruition when the public health delegation and I met with Dr. Miller, who's the Associate Dean in the Arnold School of Public Health. She stated how there had been no true communication and outreach between the senators and their constituents within the Arnold School of Public Health, specifically during her time at USC, which is about 5 years. And so to change that, we just wanted to send out an outreach form, and that went out last Monday. We already have 22 responses, which is definitely might seem a little small, but y'all student participation, we're working on it. And so basically these responses are high in quality, and the kind of big takeaway here is that our constituents want to see us table there and actually interact with us, which is so fun and fresh and cool. So I just think that
putting this like recommendation in order will allow for like a continuity in that conversation rather than it just like kind of stopping. And so yeah, and then the final thing is when we take our oath of office, we're supposed to represent our constituents to the best of our ability, and this like actual like communication direct form like actually allows us to do that. So, you know, just going off the oath, if you will. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The delegation chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Chairwoman Anderson. Is there a motion to pass by acclamation? Okay. Okay, approved. I wasn't expecting that one. Thank you, Senator Cumby. Seeing no more questions, this legislation is not referred. Oh, it's passed. Oh, good job. Okay, fully passed. Okay, continue. You're recognized. Okay. Okay. I'm not hearing any objections. The legislation is passed. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBO 11659, sponsored by the delegation from the Darla Moore School of Business, a recommendation to urge the Darla Moore School of Business to continue modernizing programs and courses.
The sponsors are now recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hello, everybody. So this bill comes from conversations that members of my delegation have had with students in the business school about some of the program or classes, especially in the upper levels of some of the programs. They're just a little outdated. Sometimes people have told me that during these classes, professors will tell them, all right, so I have to teach you guys this way, but this is not actually how things are done in the real business world. And that's just, it's kind of a problem. And it's something that as the Darla Moore School of Business, we all have a lot of pride in it. And it's something that if we can fix, I think we would all benefit greatly in that college. And so a few specific examples, like especially some of the finance courses, they're just outdated. Finance 470, I think 471 is another one. And then Finance 365, those are some of the notorious ones from what I've heard. So I will yield my time to questions.
The delegation chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the delegation chairman? Senator Lapsley. Is there a second? Seeing no objections, the legislation is now passed. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBO 11660, sponsored by Senator Geddens, Mozo, and Blanton, a recommendation to expand study space at the new Satellite College of Nursing campus at Lexington Medical Center.
The senators are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Much like the senator and my colleagues at the College of Pharmacy, the College of Nursing is having some issues with study spaces at our new campus across the river at Lexington Medical Center. Probably the only difference here is our campus was just finished 3 months ago, and Coker Life Sciences was completed in 1976. So we can see this has been like a 50-year problem with lack of study spaces here on this campus. My delegation and I have worked with the dean of our college and several of the administrators there to try to come up with a solution to create some study spaces at our new campus. We have now some sort of temporary deal going on where a weekly schedule was being made with rooms and with classrooms and meeting rooms that were not being used on that schedule were being reserved for student study space. My understanding for what I've seen is that schedule has kind of fallen off for the last few weeks. So this recommendation aims to restart that temporary reservation process so we have those reservations being made and posted publicly on the electronic billboards and on our Blackboard site until we come up with a permanent solution, which is the second half of this legislation, which aims to recommend that administration here find a permanent study space for students to use during the college's business hours. Being that our campus building is a lease agreement with Lexington Medical Center, the operational hours are much different than the buildings that we have here in Columbia. So our normal business hours, like I was saying, are different. So they're not available around the clock. It has to be during the hours set in the lease agreement is when the building can be occupied. One avenue we pursued was this new campus has a third space on the third floor. This is called the Roost. This is like a flex study space for both individual meetings and group study. However, this space has been reserved for faculty only. So students are generally not even allowed on the third floor unless they have a meeting with faculty, which is the third floor is where our faculty offices are. Multiple efforts have been made to try to get faculty to allow students to have access to this space, including efforts by the student body president, the provost, and the president of this university. Those pressures have not been successful, and the space continues to be closed to students. So the way my delegation sees it is we kind of already have a space that's been worked into the blueprints of this building. It's just not allowed to be used by students. So this recommendation kind of opens the door for either administration to allow a student access to the faculty Roost, or for the administration to begin works to create kind of a student version of the Roost that has, flex space, ergonomic furniture, kind of like cubicle spaces just for quiet study. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The senators yield their time to questions. Are there any questions for the senators? Is there a second? The legislation is adopted. Congratulations. The clerk, moving on to more legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11661, sponsored by Senator Kerner, a recommendation to implement social workers as a resource to students at the University of South Carolina.
The senators recognized to speak on the legislation.
Good evening. So this came up during a delegation meeting with the Dean of the College of Social Work, Terry Brown. And she brought a concern saying that most of the time when students come to her with issues, it really doesn't have to do much with classes. It has to do with bigger things like food insecurity, financial insecurity, and home insecurity. And I think a big issue here is that we need to provide resources for students, especially concerning home insecurity, because whether it's 5,000 students or 2 students, we need to close the gap on homelessness on this campus. Students should be allowed to focus on their studies and roll with it, not where they're living, what they're eating, and if they can afford those classes. So with that, our law school, School of Medicine, and School of Engineering already have social workers that work in these schools specifically for these students. But other colleges are lacking it, and those aren't like central locations necessarily for most students on this campus. And as far as I'm concerned, we only have one employee that works in the Student Center for Wellbeing who actually has the title social worker. And so one person is not enough for 50,000 students. But basically having social workers, a team of social workers that students can have access to, provides more support than just a counselor or what's available at the Student Center for Health and Wellbeing, because social workers can help assist students with needs like healthcare, housing, and legal services, and point them to resources like that, versus therapists and counselors and psychiatrists tend to just focus on mental health issues and things of that nature. Also, this is completely feasible. It has been done at UC Berkeley in every college for those students, and it's been done at Ohio State also. And our Vice President for Student Affairs and Academic Support, Rex Tolliver, actually has already done this initiative while he was working in Illinois. So this would be entirely feasible. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing no questions, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11662, sponsored by Senator Kay, a recommendation to urge the university to fix the Senate Street garage elevator.
Chairman Kay, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Good afternoon, everybody. It has recently come to my attention by a couple of students that the Senate Street garage is currently inoperable and occasionally has malfunctionings and has had these issues for the better part of a month. So this is just a quick piece to urge that the university looks at fixing that. We're doing a lot of maintenance in this body recently. I'll yield.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Senator Matthews. Is there a second? Hearing no objections, the legislation is now passed. Congratulations. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11663, sponsored by Senator Kay, a bill to amend Chapter 3 to clarify the word penultimate.
Penultimate, yeah. So this was something that was written last year when we did the large overhaul of Chapter 3. It was our assumption that the word penultimate meant final. It actually does not mean final, it means second to final, which was not our intention to have a weird dynamic where everything is due at the very last Senate session for executive leadership, except for this one particular thing. So all this does is strike out the word penultimate and put in the word, I believe, final or last. On the final. So that's all this intends to do. I'll yield.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Lapsley.
No, that's just the general acceptance of the word penultimate, which literally just means second to last. It was just it sounded very final, but that apparently is not actually what it means.
Seeing no more questions, the legislation is now referred to the Finance Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11664, sponsored by Senator Kay, a bill to amend Chapter 5 of the Student Government Codes to add responsibilities to the Chief Justice.
All right, so this one does really one particular thing that has already been complained about repeatedly by the justice, which is their inability to engage in changing grammar and formatting issues inside of the codes. They are the branch responsible for editing these codes and making sure that they remain solvent. As part of that, though, we've occasionally had situations where the codes look funky or they just are funky simply because they're expected to copy and paste these over and make no changes to them. And occasionally senators make mistakes in creating the codes. I know I've done it before, like it's just human. This only intends to make it to where they are allowed to make some of these changes, and inside of it, it does state that they must be, I believe the particular word is non-substantive. So these aren't changes to content, they are just there to say, hey, if someone made a grammatical error, someone made a formatting error, or someone made a spelling error, that they can go back and check it and make sure that that is proper. So we're not handing a document to a bunch of individuals that is just got very basic errors like that. And they do have to indicate all of these changes made to the Student Senate, so there should be no concern about this potentially being abused. I'll yield.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Senator Lapsley.
There's only one Chief Justice. He's the one who makes the recommendation, he's the one who actually changes the codes from time to time. I would ask, if possible, that this be adopted by unanimous consent, simply because they are doing the edits to the codes over this break, which means they're going to be dealing with about 30-odd pieces of legislation. Some may have contradictory pieces or just formatting errors, and I just like them to have the capability to be like, hey, let's make sure these codes look proper.
Senator Lapsley.
They are not. So the legislation that has been produced as of this session has not been put inside of the codes as of, I think, a month or so ago. We are dealing with the most updated codes that have been updated. This has just not been updated yet, just because the Chief Justice has not gotten around to it. There's just a lot
Senator Kerner. Is there a second? Objections.
It's a commit.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, the legislation is now referred to the Judiciary Committee.
All right.
Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11665, sponsored by Senator Kaye, a bill to alter the operations and function of the Freshman Council.
So this bill is a particularly large bill. There's quite a few pages to it. My apologies for that. Effectively, about 2 years ago, we looked to codify the student government agencies and the student government organizations, which constituted government relations, as well as the Freshman Council and later the Philanthropy Council. The problem with that is they were established through charters in previous sessions, and instead of making the changes into a code format, we simply copied and pasted the charters into the codes, which is, it's not something we should have done, but it was done. All this does is basically puts the formatting back into the actual codes format. It also makes a couple of additional changes. I've worked with the president's branch on this, the vice president's branch on that, to see how we could best ensure that the Freshman Council operates at its peak efficiency, which includes a couple of changes. The selection of the directors it gets changed from a single appointment to a collection of all of the executives. They will all have a voice in deciding who are the chairman or the directors for Freshman Council. Partially because Freshman Council touches so many parts of student government, we thought it was important that all 4 executives get some say in deciding who those individuals are. There were a couple of updates to responsibilities and positions, including codifying the positions of student Freshman Council liaisons and chairmen and chairwomen. Previously, these exist, but were never codified, which meant they were kind of real, kind of fake positions. We're just putting it into law that these are real and that they should be treated as thus and should have some authority and power built into that. Let's see. There's a couple more pieces. The Philanthropy Council changed a lot less. There were not as many issues with it. Most of that was just formatting, moving it into an actual code section and getting it out of a charter's formatting. I'll yield if anyone has any additional questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Senator Lapsley. I think it's just only going to go to judiciary, if that's okay. But it will go to judiciary, yes. Seeing no more questions, this legislation is now referred to the Judiciary Committee. Yes. So Camden just went over SBL 11664, so that was the bill before this about Chapter 5 of the Student Government Codes, and that bill is referred to the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Just wanted to let everybody know.
Judiciary?
Instead of the Judiciary Committee. It's from Maura. Okay.
To figure it out?
Yeah, heard. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there will be a brief recess. Thank you, everybody.
Subject to the call.
There's been a motion to commit SBL 65 to the Powers and Responsibilities Committee as well as the Judiciary Committee. Is there a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read. Seeing none, we are now on the call of uncontested legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 11645, introduced by Senator Hopkins, a recommendation to better the quality of online classes.
Senator Hopkins, you are recognized to speak.
Hi guys. Okay. So I feel like I talked a lot last week and then we have heard a lot of people talk today, so I'm going to try to keep this short. Another big shout out to the Deputy Secretary of Academics, Ms. Ainsley. That was a lot of her research, so thank you to her. I do want to say, after Senate last week, I was approached by a few concerned individuals who were like, Zoe, no, don't make our classes harder. So that's not actually the intention. If anything, I feel like having more obvious standards would help you all because it's less putting more pressure on the students, but instead the professors, because having more strict regulations and quality standards will kind of just help sort out the information you'll be learning in the class. Like, for example, it'll be more strict about information that can go on exams and making sure it's completely correlated to things that have been learned throughout the modules. And it'll make the learning objectives just easier to follow. So if anything, that sounds easier to me. I know personally, my hardest class I've had in college was an online class, and I thought that was embarrassing, but like talking to people, a lot of people have had bad experiences with online classes, so I just feel like getting the quality standards up, like I said, Clemson does better, so like, let's look at that. I feel like that'll really just help us out, and I'm not doing this to punish you all, so just remember that. I'm a nice person. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing no more questions, we will move to a voice vote on the legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and the legislation is adopted. Congratulations. Continuing on with the call of uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11648, introduced by Chairman Kaye, a bill to establish a definitions appendix.
Chairman Kaye, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
All right, I have a tiger burn to go get to, so I'll make this real brief. This establishes a definitions appendix. It's as simple as it comes. I'll yield.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing no questions, we will move to a voice vote on the legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and the legislation is adopted. Congratulations. Continuing on with the call of uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, we are now on the call of contested legislation. Hearing none, we are now in line for a period of open discussion. Does any senator wish to bring a matter of attention to the body? Hearing none, we are now in line for a period of announcements. Are there any announcements from the floor? With no further announcements, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Without objection, the Senate will now stand adjourned until Wednesday, December 4th.